Welcome back to Star Wars in the Galaxy, watching all the Star Wars we can get our hands on. This is the beginning of Season 12 of Star Wars in the Galaxy. Unfortunately, this is recorded by future Eli because unfortunately we recorded the first 20 minutes of this episode and then forgot to press record. And so that's why the intro of this episode sounds a little wonky. We are here with Michael McCoy from All Remaining Systems, good friend of mine, good friend of Jacob's. And I just wanted to give you some context that we didn't explain in the episode because we were just trying to catch up to where we were. We're going through Star Wars Droids, which none of us, including Michael, have ever seen before. Jacob and I are going completely blind. We knew a few names, and that is really it that we knew about the series. We watched the first two episodes called The White Witch and Escape into Terror. Let me give a quick summary of both of these episodes. In The White Witch, C-3PO and R2-D2 are dropped into an adventure on the planet of Ingo, and they meet these two guys named Thal Jobin and Jord Dusat, and they also meet this woman named Kia on the planet. And they come into conflict with a gang called the Fromm gang, who's trying to take over the galaxy with a super weapon called the Trigon 1. They rescue Jord from the Fromm gang's base on Ingo with the help of their speeder, which is called the White Witch, and also a mysterious lightsaber found in Jobin's speeder that's just kind of left there. And they escape the planet of Ingo at the end. And in the following episode, Escape into Terror, they go to a nearby planet called Anu, where the real Fromm base is. Not just simply an outpost, and they come into conflict with the Fromm gang again, and they receive help from Kia's mother, who is revealed to be a part of the Rebel Alliance, whatever form that takes by then. And yeah, this is all about the C-3PO and R2-D2 working for Thal and Jord and Kia, and coming into the conflict with the Fromm gang, with the patriarch Size Fromm and his son Tig Fromm, as well as their servant Vlix Fromm, or maybe, I don't know if his last name is Fromm, probably not. But yeah, I hope you enjoy the episode. I hope you enjoy our thoughts as well as Michael's thoughts. Really great guy. So glad to have him on this episode. And yeah, may the force be with you always. Roll the tape. I'm going to mute you.
Hello there.
Welcome back to another episode of Star Wars in the Galaxy, watching all the Star Wars we can get our hands on. This is episode 93. We were talking before about how... So this is the first time all of us have seen Droids, and we were talking earlier. I guess I should give some context. We thought we were recording for the last 20 minutes, and we weren't. That was fun.
This is take two.
This is a professional operation.
Yes, professional operation.
Extremely professional. Extremely professional right here.
And we talked a little bit about Lucas's fascination with fast cars and that taking place here in the White Witch in Droids. And we were talking about daddy issues with Tig Fromm. And let's see, what else were we talking about? We were talking about
about the droid versus organic sort of.
Yeah, let's do the droid versus organic stuff now. I thought it was really interesting that there was this push. It was the old generation versus the new generation that Tig felt like very strongly that the old ways were done and that they need to start using machines in place of actual organic labor. I thought that was a really interesting theme that doesn't actually get explored as much in Star Wars as I realized it, as I thought it did.
Yeah.
But I don't know, what did everybody think of that?
I mean, I think the conceit or the implication here is kind of that droids, along with that line where C-3PO, when he thinks R2-D2 has been destroyed, he's like, oh, you were a marvel of modern technology, droids in here are kind of seen as, or this story kind of treats droids and automation as something very new, I think, which of course is in opposition. It kind of contradicts later on in Star Wars, we, in at least in the expanded universe, we kind of come to treat it as, droids have been a part of life for thousands and thousands of years. So I think that's interesting. But When we think about, and this is obviously long before I was around, long before any of us were around, but in 1985, there must have, I imagine there must have been more discussion of automation, computers, like kind of rise of the machines.
Yeah, that was definitely
like,
a fear at the time.
So and that is really like from what I know, from what cultural information I do have about that time, which is admittedly not much. I'm not an expert in any sense, but it really does seem like that the way that the show talks about it, that was really big at the time. I just think it's interesting, and that's something that's kind of been pushed to the side or not really addressed that much in Star Wars. More recently, in Solo, there was with, oh gosh, I'm blanking on the name of, with L3 and Solo and the Droid Uprising. There's a little bit of that, but through a more kind of modern, almost kind of liberation, kind of a very modern version of liberation and social justice with the way that they talk about it, which is very different from how the creators kind of frame it here. I know. What do you guys think about that? That was something that I kind of thought a lot about.
I agree a lot with what you said, and I think the angle that really stood out to me was how nobody looks twice at a droid in this. Like, the way, obviously the scene that stands out the most is when, Tiggy, Size, and Vlix are all talking about how they're looking for those two droids when C-3PO and R2-D2 are literally right next to them. But
that
they
was a gem.
The droids are just like so invisible to them because they like, it speaks to an inherent bias from organics to see synthetics as lesser. And so it's, they're they're talking about how this group that includes true droids is a threat, and when two droids are right in front of them, they can't even connect the dots in their mind that could be connected. So
yeah,
I love that, like, as in two levels, as like as a like a bit of a slapstick comedy sort of thing. But as Michael said, and it's one of those, I remember people talking about this with talking about, like, people were trying to poke plot holes in A New Hope, specifically when Owen buys Threepio and R2, how does he not recognize them from years past? But, like, I think Owen's somebody, and most people are, who view droids like tools. Would you remember a screwdriver that you would have used 20 years ago? And it like, they don't view droids as, as having the sentience, and whether they do have the sentience or whether they don't have the sentience is a topic of further discussion, one that I know Jacob is very fond of having. But
hashtag Battle Droid Society.
Hashtag Battle Droid Society. But it's just interesting to me that already it's fitting within the vibe of the Star Wars universe. And as Michael said earlier, like, the idea of, there are some moments in here, there are just some small little moments that are like, that is pure Star Wars right there. That is what Star Wars, like, even as they were struggling to find what Star Wars was, they managed to hit the spot quite a few times.
Yeah, it's, the way we described it earlier was, it's a Saturday morning cartoon that they kind of tacked the Star Wars IP onto, but they really do manage to kind of capture a lot of the essence of Star Wars in small ways.
Yeah, like we were talking about earlier before the incident. Star Wars loves organized crime. That's here. Star Wars loves daddy issues. That's here with the gangsters.
They love races.
Yeah, like, it's got.
Yeah. They love races. They love fast cars.
It's got all the. They love fast cars. They love racing. It's got all the ingredients of Star Wars that are kind of the most timeless, even though it came before so much of. It was really before Star Wars had kind of really set the tone for itself and decided what it was and what it could and couldn't be, as Michael put it so eloquently before the incident. I mean, what else jumped out to you guys.
I was gonna say this earlier, but I also like how small this story is. Like, we need to have this balance, I feel like, in Star Wars of the bigger and the smaller stories. And I think this was brought up a lot with the first few episodes of Andor, how small that conflict was. But like, this is one planet. Okay, fine. In the second episode, we find out it's 2 planets. They want to control the galactic underworld, but like, they have a super weapon and a few they have a super weapon that they still need to like get up online, and like a few bases on a few random planets, and it's like the crime syndicate doesn't look to be more than like, I mean, it's obviously bigger than this, but in the show it doesn't look to be more than like 10 to 15 people, and the entire crew to work to stop them is Fall, Jord, Kia's mom, and the droids, and that's it. Like, we're dealing with such a small scale conflict here, and it's really fun to see, like, no, the entire galaxy is not at stake. I mean, first of all, the entire galaxy is under the oppression of the Empire, but there's no galactic implications for this. This is just like a small scale adventure.
Yeah, I kind of like, I think not every story has to be Bard saving, we have to save the entire galaxy. Like, I think that's,
the stakes can be relatively low.
Yeah. I think that's something that a shameless Rebels plug. I do love Rebels very much, but I think that's something that Rebels does a good job of, is low stakes storytelling. And I think having the low stakes storytelling in there for Droids and for any Star Wars, or for most Star Wars projects that do it well, that's what helps make it Star Wars to me, is kind of the combination of high stakes, and also there can be low stakes as well, I think. And
I think the TV shows for Star Wars are much more suited for the low stakes, because
absolutely,
I think obviously with a smaller budget and with more time to tell a story, I think you can flesh out something that is more smaller stakes. And the more TV you put out, the harder it gets to constantly do the large stakes, because even the movies struggled with that, where they've basically done the Death Star plot 4 times.
Yeah, there is that.
I will say this about the small stakes, and we haven't seen a single stormtrooper. We haven't, there were like a few mentions of the rebellion in the second episode, but that's it. But then there's, I think, maybe the most interesting thing, I think, for me from either of these 2 episodes, is that while trying to rescue Jord, who's been taken away by the Fromm gang, Thal reaches in his speeder and pulls out a lightsaber.
Yeah.
That was really shocking to me.
It was extremely shocking to me as well. I did not expect that.
Especially that it's basically the dark saber. Like, at least to me, like looking at the design of the handle, I was like, that's pretty much the dark saber. Like, in the Clone Wars, did they, like, was that, I wonder was that purposeful? Was that a reference? I don't know. I might have to look into that.
I wouldn't put it past Filoni at this point.
No,
absolutely not.
What was I gonna say? There's just so much, frankly, in that one like revelation of that lightsaber. I'm like, where did that thing come from? Because there's, me, I will try to fit anything into any like canon box or something that'll try to fit into, even within the Legends continuity, because this was later retconned in Legends to take place 15 BBY. 4 years
15
after
okay 15 BBY
Sith.
Okay, fair enough.
And so I forgot to mention this earlier. We are doing this now because even though Bad Batch Season 2 comes first, because Bad Batch Season 2 is not all out yet, and we want to leave it some time to sit before we dive into that. So we're stalling with Droids right here. Very eloquent of us. Very elegant of us. That was what I meant. But I was gonna say. But I wonder. I started making some theories, but I'd love to hear yours. Whose lightsaber do you think that?
Well, I'll start because I have the most basic theory. I just assumed that because the lore of Star Wars is ill-defined at best at this point, I figured that the creators of the show were like, it'd be cool to have a character with a lightsaber, and that was all the thought that went into it.
I'm
I
sure
did
that
not
is
think
the
it. I
actual
did not
answer.
think of
Yeah.
anything deeper.
I'm sure that is the actual answer. Yes. My thought for like trying to explain it with canon, because we know these existed in Legends, was I'm like, what if it was a lightsaber of an Inquisitor?
Mm.
Because it is a red lightsaber. And yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
It's such an
I'm
ill-defined
kinda
era
with-
that I guess they could say that a Jedi had a red lightsaber for some reason. But like, yeah, it is like the weirdest. But I do like, even though they are like, oh, let's just have a lightsaber to make it feel cool. I do like how special they make it feel. Like the introduction of the lightsaber feels big.
yeah,
feels
they
this
still
is a
make it like
huge game changer.
Yeah, but I think, yeah, I on a similar note though, there weren't any mentions of the Force in the first 2 episodes at least,
Nope.
which is interesting, and I think this is before the prequels. This is before the Jedi, and the Force was really kind of before it was really super fleshed out and demystified, I guess. This was still far before that time, so it does make sense, but it is interesting as well. I was just wondering if you guys had paid any attention to that.
It's interesting just to me because and then like Kia calls the lightsaber a handy little gadget.
Yeah,
which I wrote down.
That was a choice piece of dialogue, I thought.
And even though Obi-Wan does go on that long soliloquy at the beginning of A New Hope, this is the weapon of a Jedi Knight, not as clumsy or random as a blaster. I think that the use of a lightsaber in the early Legends days was a lot more democratized than it is now.
Mm.
I think it wasn't as connected to the Jedi or the Sith or the Force as it is.
Yeah,
now.
I think it was mostly just like, this is an old-timey weapon that people don't really use anymore.
Yeah. But anybody can use it. Anybody can pick it up. You just don't see them that often.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I'm trying to think what else. Look through my notes.
Another thing that stood out to me was that I really liked the character designs in this. I think all of our main characters were pretty like. I was really digging the kind of like punk vibe they had. Like 2 of the main characters just straight up had mohawks. Like,
oh yeah, it was great.
It very much appeals to my sensibilities. For one, I think it speaks very well to their history and their background, and their quote unquote careers as racers. And I just wasn't expecting character designs that I would actually latch onto in this show. I thought they would all be sort of generic, 80s cartoon, but no, I think it really fit the vibe they were going for.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think that especially Word, I was a big fan of Jord's look. I really liked I really liked what they did. It hit the right balance of outlandish. It still feels like Star Wars, which I guess is a bit of a hindsight 2020. But there you go. The villain, like the gangster species, that was to me where it kind of felt like, oh yeah, this is like an 80s Saturday morning cartoon with Star Wars stuck on it. Like that to me felt a little less like what we now think of as Star Wars. I'm not exactly sure why. Just to me, something about it didn't quite mesh as well with all the knowledge and Star Wars shows and books and everything that we have now.
There's the idea that and we were talking about this before, but you and I'm not saying that if creators like violate this in any way, they're not like good Star Wars creators and stuff like that. But there's an unofficial rule book of Star Wars now. There's a way that people talk about Star Wars and do Star Wars and stuff like that. And specifically I'm thinking about the magic elements of it. You know what I mean? The weird and wonderful. like they hadn't really figured that out yet. They could do stuff like the Fromm gang and these weird species, and like they frankly to me look like characters from Alice in Wonderland, but like, you know, that's what they did, and that's what they decided to do for Star Wars back then, and they didn't really have anybody telling them no, so that's what they did.
Yeah, there was a lot of room, especially back then, I think, to kind of experiment, you know, play around with things, experiment. I really liked that, and I felt that in these episodes. For sure.
I also think that there's a good lesson in here, and I think this is like, I think that watching a few of the episodes of Droids, I think is actually like, I think a lot of Star Wars fans would benefit from watching a few of these episodes. Not to get too preachy or anything, but I think that like we have such an idea that Star Wars needs to be important and serious and meaningful all of the freaking time. But this show is not important or serious or meaningful pretty much any of the time. And it's really fun.
Yeah. It doesn't need to be.
It does not need to be. It was never aiming to be. And like, but like,
this whole show is just, let's make a fun show with R2D2 and C3PO. That's it.
Yeah.
That's legitimately
let's get the kids to love Star Wars.
Let's get the kids to love Star Wars, and you know, like they even did a freaking episode of Star Wars Droids in the Clone Wars, which I've talked very, very lovingly about. Nomad Droids Go.
Absolutely bewildering episode.
Yeah,
but like, I mean, I guess that's the point.
If you converted that into 2D animation, you can't convince me that wouldn't be an episode of Droids.
It's true.
Like, is that the one where they go under? Is that the one where they go underground?
Nope.
Which one is that? That one is even crazier.
That's Mercy Mission. That's the one before that.
Oh gosh.
The one I'm talking about is where they go to the planet with the little people.
Oh, the planet with the tiny. Yeah. Oh, that's
the little people, and then they go to the planet with Albi Diwa, who's a god. Love me some Albi Diwa.
That's something else. Yeah, those episodes are something else.
They're fantastic.
They sure are.
But I also love, and this is just a weird detail that they totally played so incredibly fast and loose with what the freaking White Witch was.
Yeah.
Because it was a speeder at one point, it fit under that ramp, and then it just flew into space. I'm like, okay, it's a ship too.
Yeah. Well, I thought they loaded it. Did I miss C?
I assumed they loaded it into Kia's ship after they fixed it up.
Oh, okay.
That's what I thought it was. But I was confused about that for a minute too. I was like, wait, can the White Witch fly? I was like, did I miss something?
Yeah, I don't know. Who knows? I mean, I thought
maybe I just didn't follow that continuity.
I mean, it does just go by so fast. That's another thing about this show, is it crams a lot into 20 minutes.
It's extremely fast paced.
It is an exceedingly efficient in its storytelling.
It, as Lawrence Kasdan says, it moves like a son of a bitch. It really does. Especially the first episode. The first episode, I gotta say, like the second episode, like I noticed like my notes were like sufficiently longer for the first episode than the second episode. I think it really is because the first episode acts as much about exposition as it is about the actual plot of the episode. Because they have to clue us into this new part of the universe. They have to clue us into Ingo and Kia and Jord and Fall, as well as what's happening with the Fromm gang and having to stop the weapon and blah, blah, blah.
And have a whole plot where one of the main characters gets captured and you have to break them out of the enemy secret base. Like, it does a lot.
The economy in the first episode is freaking... It's unbelievable, honestly. Like, now that I'm thinking about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will just also add, there are some fantastic phrasings in this. I think Kia calls somebody a two-toed swamp sucker, which is fantastic.
Yeah, there's some amazing...
And then,
and
then Vlik tells Jord that he wants to rearrange his molecules, which is perfect. Like,
as one of the droids is like, I'll play havoc with your servo motors. Like,
that was
C3PO has like a C3PO basically has like a slipped disc or something. Like he's like,
That's in
oh,
the
my
second
one of
episode, yeah.
my servo discs slipped, and he has like back problems. I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is.
Yeah.
I found it incredibly funny
Threepio
and
having back
off-putting.
problems.
I thought it was very funny and off-putting how flexible and spry and athletic C-3PO was in this.
Yeah, they're really taking liberties with the animation style, and I'm kind of
Yeah.
all here for it. Like,
Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
into
honestly.
it doesn't make sense, but I kind of love it.
Honestly, yeah, it was very kind of almost Visions-esque. The way they were just like, it
Yeah.
felt like they were just like, we're gonna do what we want. We don't really care. Like, it's
Just
not
have
that
fun
deep.
with it.
Yeah,
Who gives
it's
a,
not that
who
deep.
gives a crap?
Yeah. I will
Yeah,
say that
absolutely.
I also thought that like there was the beginning of that second episode, Escape into Terror, when they're on Kia's ship and they're trying to fix something and then they go flying off. I'm like,
Oh,
that
yeah.
was very Star Wars to me.
Oh yeah.
Like, because I remember like they did that a bit at the end of Nomad Droids where R2 literally pilots 3PO through space to a Separatist dreadnought.
Yeah.
And then it reminds me of AP5 in that episode of Rebels, singing with the
Yep.
Libres.
There were a surprising amount of solid gags in this that
Oh, yeah.
actually amused me. The one that actually made me laugh was the first scene we get with Size Fromm when Tiggy is making the excuses for not breaking his dad out of jail twice, despite breaking other people out of jail.
That was hilarious.
Really funny.
That was incredible.
I also like that they just threw this out there just because this is the Star Wars detail if I've ever heard one. They're like, oh yeah, like he's 900 years old. I'm like, interesting.
Yeah.
It's like
Yoda.
him and Yoda were around at the same time.
Yeah.
It also it clues us into the longevity. I also like that's the other thing is that I didn't expect so many references to OT stuff. Like Jabba gets a shout out in the first episode.
Yep.
Oh yeah. So do Tauntauns and Hoth in the second episode.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Doesn't the Bunta Eve or something?
Yeah, there was a Bunta
gets a shout out.
Bunta reference,
really
which is
surprised
before
like,
the Phantom Menace.
Where did that come from? Like, yeah.
It must have been earlier in Legends. Let's see when the first appearance in
either that or George actually pulled from that as a reference. If that's the case, good on him.
I think George pulled from because it says I'm looking on Wikipedia right now. The first mention of a planet called Bunta was in The White Witch. I think George Lucas, and I'm not joking about this, pulled that name from Droids for the Phantom Menace. That's fantastic.
Wow.
You love
I think I was looking on IMDb. He is credited. George Lucas is credited as an executive producer in a couple.
Yeah, what does that really mean?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it was a little hard to track down some of the information as I was kind of doing my research. Like the Wikipedia and the IMDb were very, very contradictory. There were like a whole rather like 10 people, 11, 12 maybe credited with producing in various various.
And it's always been hard to gauge Lucas's level of involvement in non-films pre the Clone Wars. Like there's always debate about how much he was involved with the holiday special. I think that extends here to Droids and even the Ewok movies and all this weird stuff.
From what I understand, it doesn't seem like much.
Yeah. That seems to be the general consensus is not much. But even what not much means is something
debatable.
Yeah, I think Star Wars in general, especially with the TV shows at least, it does kind of. Star Wars in general seems to like they like to play a little fast and loose, get a little loosey goosey with the the credits of who's producing and who's it kind of becomes just like this person was involved in it like.
Yeah,
they were a big part of it,
or was involved at one point in it. Like,
But I also love the gag you mentioned earlier, Michael, about Tig failing to rescue Size from prison not once but twice, which has made me dub Tig Fromm the official Ochi of Bestoon of the Fromm gang, because he is the incredibly threatening mercenary who cannot get anything done to save his life.
Well, it wasn't that he couldn't. I think he did 2 successful prison breaks. He just chose not to break his neck.
That's fantastic.
Oh, I think the backstory, just the implication there is pretty hilarious.
Yeah.
Like it's pretty good. It's pretty good.
And I also like that was the other one. I don't know if you guys remember this from the middle of Escape and Terror. There's that line Threepio keeps repeating throughout the episode. Freedom is everyone's fight.
I love that. That freedom is everyone's
I'm like,
fight. I was like,
yeah.
That's a
Wait,
Star
is this-
Wars line. I'm
is
like,
this Andor or is this Droids? Like,
I was gonna say, I'm like,
feels very
yeah,
timely.
that kind of
That
fits
sounds like
into
something
Andor.
Nemik would put in his manifesto.
It
Oh,
would.
yeah.
It really does.
If they sneak a reference to that in Andor season 2, I'm gonna lose my mind.
It's gonna be the greatest thing ever. Try.
We gotta start writing. We need to start a letter writing campaign
Yeah,
right
we're
now
gonna
to get
slide
that
a
to
note
get that
to
in season
Filoni
2.
and
Shadow
Favreau.
position.
Like, hey guys, it would make me really happy.
Can you just sneak this line in there? No one will notice, I swear.
Yeah.
I know one will know.
That would be the most. That would be the that would be the most under the radar reference of all time.
Mm-hmm.
I remember
Just we
specifically,
absolutely know.
Droids, like, it is one of the lesser known things from Star Wars, but like I know there are people who in Lucas who really like I mean, I know this guy's job to know everything, but Pablo Hidalgo tweeted a while ago. I remember him saying he was talking with JJ when they were coming up with designs and character names for The Force Awakens, and he's like, "Hey, there's this character in Droids named Kylo Ren, and you're making a character named Kylo Ren." And JJ, love him to death, but he made a rookie mistake, and he was like, "Nobody's gonna notice that." And then
People noticed.
Star Wars fans, no,
As if there aren't people who have studied extensively the 100,000 plus pages on Wikipedia.
indeed, 100%.
And now with Disney Plus, with Droids being on there, it becomes even easier to find all
Even
this
easier,
out.
yeah. And I will say this: here's a twist that I wasn't expecting. We were talking about the lightsaber twist earlier, but Kia's mother being part of the Rebel Alliances, they call it, which even by Legends standards, like with the continuity, doesn't make a whole ton of sense, but it's fine because, like, again, they didn't really know what they were doing.
And
like, they didn't know
it's kind of weird that they bring up the rebellion thing when the Empire hasn't been brought in yet. It seems more like this rebellion is against any form of quote unquote tyranny, like in this case, the Fromm gang, as opposed to the Galactic Empire.
That is true. It's interesting that, yeah, like, rebellion against what?
Mm-hmm.
And these almost seem like more vigilantes than anything.
Yeah.
And which is why my headcanon, which has no basis in anything and breaks all forms of continuity and universe and stuff like that, but I'm gonna say it right now. Kia's mother and Kia are working for a Saga.
All right.
I wouldn't put it
Just
past.
makes sense. Just makes sense to me.
I don't have anything that contradicts that, so go off.
You can't. Technically, I can't say no to that.
No, I'm just imagining,
Can't
like,
say no to
Kia- and I'm now just thinking about, like, Kia talking with Saw, and she's like, so, like, cause yeah, this droid was really passionate. He was saying, like, freedom is everybody's fight, and Saw's like, we could use some more people like that, but it was a droid. Even better. Let's see.
Definitely.
I also here's another thing. Just the camp is just beautiful. When the captain of the transport ship touches down at the secret base on Anu, he says, "We are now entering the top secret base." Which
Subtlety.
alrighty then. Which I think that one quote really perfectly describes the show. Like, it's just, yeah, okay. All right. Anything else you guys have for these 2 episodes? Like, there's so much absolutely wacky stuff.
I just want to reiterate that I went in expecting this to be like terrible. Like, I think a lot of the weird, obscure Star Wars things of this time, Droids, Ewoks, Caravan of Courage, Battle for Endor, they all exist in the shadow of the holiday special.
Yeah.
The holiday special is the big bad one that everyone knows about. And so we all just kind of assume that these are going to be just as bad. But I'll be lying if I said this wasn't fun watching these 2 episodes. Do I foresee myself watching the rest of the show? Probably not. But I kind of had a good time with these. They're fun, silly, campy. They are really Saturday morning cartoons that Star Wars kind of gets tacked onto, but it kind of gets the vibe of Star Wars. It's a fun romp. I didn't have a bad time at all. If you've got any interest in this show, it might be worth checking out.
Yeah, it's really interesting just for me. Like I really I liked it a lot more than I thought I was going to. I really did. I didn't think it was going to be like I thought it was going to be all camp, all cheese. And it was a lot of that. But like it actually like packs a punch, and I'm excited to see because and this is the other thing I didn't realize. I thought, I was talking with Jacob a lot more before we started about this. I thought it was going to be way more episodic than it actually ended up being. I thought that episode 2 was going to have almost nothing to do with episode 1.
Yeah.
But it does. And I looked on Disney Plus, and it looks like, because the next episode is called The Trigon Unleashed, and that's the name of the super weapon that they have, the Trigon 1. And it looks like we're going to be following these characters for at least 2 more episodes. Like these specific ones, not just R2 and Threepio.
And that's a really interesting and kind of bold choice, because you got to keep in mind at the time, there's not streaming services available. So most kids watching this will just catch whatever episodes are on. So you don't get all the pieces of the overarching story.
Yeah, it is actually pretty bold.
And so the episodic nature would have been like the safer bet. But the fact that they went with this and thought they had a story worth telling over multiple episodes, like, good on them.
I mean, that's
Jacob and I will
real
discuss
ambition
this. Here. Jacob and I will discuss this too when we get to these episodes, but I don't know if you know this, Mike, this is fantastic. They produced a TV special double episode after the release of the season called The Great Keep. And it's a double-length episode.
Okay.
And you would think that it takes place after season 1 of Droids. And you would be wrong. because it's Star Wars. And we can never have anything like timeline-wise make sense. Great Heap, and we will be watching this in accordance with this on In a Galaxy, takes place in between episodes 9 and 10 of Droids.
Of course it does.
Why?
Of course it does.
I thought you were going to be like, it's before season 1. I'm like, okay,
no,
that makes sense.
Nope.
No.
Just in the middle of the season.
Just in the middle of the season, legitimately. And by the way, like it's not even like 10 is the last episode of the season. No, I think it's a 13 episode season. So it's literally just in the middle for no reason. It's ridiculous.
At the 75% mark. God, I love Star Wars.
it makes absolutely no sense, and but also incredibly on brand with Star Wars.
Droids feels like the definition of like no thought, just vibes.
Yeah.
Which is a very Star Wars thing in many ways. Like,
this is a show that's just vibing.
Yeah.
It is just vibing.
Like don't think too hard.
So,
just enjoy it.
Even so, like there are some like, and I know this line is as funny as powerful as it is funny, but we were talking about freedom is everybody's fight earlier, and there's a line at the end of the episode where Threepio goes, "Atu, I was just about to strike my blow for freedom," which is fantastic. Everything about
that
it
was
is
a moment.
Amazing. Yeah, it's one more future pre-reference that I want to mention is that I don't know if either of you noticed but the R2, when R2 blasts a few of those fighters, the droid fighters that are going after them at the end of the episode, he shoots through, and I immediately thought of that moment from Rey at the end of Last Jedi.
Yeah, I thought that too, which I don't know why those 3 fighters lined up perfectly with the guns on that cannon, but I'm not going to think about it too hard. Like we said, we just vibes.
Don't think just vibes. Don't think just friggin' vibes. Anything
That'll be
else
the theme for this season of In a Galaxy. No thought, just vibes.
Just vibes. That we have our episode title. That's our episode title. Not like I'll waffle. I think I'm gonna waffle between that and just in trouble again because feels like a natural idea for this episode. But I guess after this crazy talk about these two freaking crazy episodes, we have a bunch of interview questions that we ask first-time guests on In a Galaxy that we'd love to ask Michael right now. Okay, here we go. First question: who is your favorite Star Wars character?
I always struggle with the favorite character question because there's too many for me to pick from. If I have to pick one right now, I'm going to go with... I'm always a sucker for the villains in Star Wars. I love a good Darksider. I'm going to go Kylo Ren.
Great choice. Fantastic choice.
Okay. What is your personal Star Wars movie ranking? And if you don't have a ranking readily available, what is your top 3 or your top 5?
I do have a ranking readily available. I just need to pull it up to make sure I don't get anything wrong. Or mostly that I don't forget anything. Okay. So I'm going to go from bottom to top. Okay. Worst to best. At the bottom, we've got The Clone Wars, then The Rise of Skywalker, then Attack of the Clones, Solo, Phantom Menace, Revenge of the Sith, Rogue One, Return of the Jedi, Empire Strikes Back, Force Awakens, and then Star Wars Episode 4 and The Last Jedi really get swapped on my list just about every other day. They're 1 and 2. Right now I have Episode 4 as number 1, but it really just depends on how I'm feeling that day.
Interestingly, I'm honestly, because of how much you've talked about it, and really honestly just because of of the fun we have talking about it, I thought Rogue One was going to be higher on your list, but
no, it's like right in the middle. It's a movie I really enjoy, but there's other Star Wars I really like more.
Yeah, I mean that's a great list. Yeah. What's your favorite non-movie Star Wars media that people are missing out on?
Light of the Jedi. Easy.
Hell yeah.
Republic vibe.
Freaking hell yeah. Charles Soule freaking does it. Go ahead, Jacob.
Who is your favorite Star Wars background character? Your favorite Glup Shido?
Ooh. See, this is a question I struggle with a lot because it's hard to define a Glup Shido. Like, if a Glup Shido has a line of dialogue, are they still a Glup Shido? If they have a minor contribution to the plot, are they still a Glup Shido? If I'm going to have to go with one, I'm going to say Bazine Natal from The Force Awakens.
Yeah.
Good choice.
I know of your love of Bazine Natal.
I love Bazine Natal and I love Grumgar. Those two, they're a vibe.
No, that's fantastic. I love their appearances in The Force Awakens. And Delilah Dawson wrote a short story about Bazine, right?
Yep, I think it's called like Secret Weapon or Perfect Weapon, something like that.
I was going to say Perfect Weapon rings a bell to me.
That's actually perfect. I was going to say in like 40 years, when we get the Force Awakens certain point of view, we need a Grumgar and a Bazine Natal short story.
Grumgar's going to find out that Bazine's a First Order spy and he'll feel so betrayed.
Oh, poor guy.
And beneath that rough Doatin exterior, he has a heart of gold and stuff like that.
Oh, he's a big softie.
He's a real sensitive guy. I just know it.
What in your opinion is the coolest Star Wars species?
Ooh. That's a good question. I'm a big fan visually of the Chiss. I'm not as crazy about like a lot of the stories. Like, I still haven't read the Ascendancy trilogy because I just kind of don't care.
Don't worry, I haven't either.
I'm going to go with a weird underdog pick. I'm going to go with the Alina. I like those little small boys.
Those small boys are great, especially in Mercy Mission. Great episode. Gotta shout out Mercy Mission.
Shout outs to Kazdan Paratus.
Shout out to Kazdan Paratus. Absolutely. A few. Absolutely. Jacob?
Okay. What is your favorite Star Wars planet?
I'm going to go with Mustafar. I think I just get so hyped every time it shows up. And it's obviously become a very iconic planet. It's so just like visually interesting. I can't help but love it.
Good choice. Good choice.
Yeah, very interesting. If you had a job in the Star Wars universe, what would your job be?
That is a good question as well. I mean, obviously it's a big galaxy, so it's going to be something where you get to see a lot of it. I'm going to go with a traveling chef. I'm gonna go to different worlds.
That is
and bring
amazing.
cuisine to all these different.
That is such
places.
a good. Wasn't there a chef story in The Empire Strikes Back from a certain point of view?
The chef who prepared the dinner for the
that's right. I forgot about that.
She's like the whole time she's like thinking, do I poison Darth Vader? Do I not poison Darth Vader?
Yep.
She's like, oh wait, Darth Vader doesn't eat. Never mind. That was a banger. I'm not gonna lie, that was a banger.
I forget a lot of the stories from Empire from a certain point of view, but it is really damn good.
I can't wait for the Return of the Jedi.
Return of the Jedi. I'm like, they haven't announced it yet, but like, it's gonna happen. I know it.
Yep.
If it doesn't happen, I'm gonna be very sad.
We need a Papley story. I like in honor of Connor Chikiti, we need a Papley story. What is your favorite? Well, we all know the quote. You even quoted earlier this episode. It's like poetry. They rhyme. Every stanza sort of rhymes with the last. Hopefully it'll work.
It'll work. That's the
most. Can I just say that's the most George Lucas quote ever? Because he has this really like arching, ambitious idea, and then he just ends with like, hopefully it'll work. We'll see.
That is my vibe to it.
That contrast is the most George Lucas thing I've ever heard.
It's that, and then when he says in the screening of like an early screening of Revenge of the Sith, he goes,
far in a few places.
That's what I may have gone too far in a few places.
What does he say that in reference to?
The Phantom Menace.
No,
that's what he said after
Revenge
the
of the
first screening.
I thought it was Sith.
Oh my god.
No, it's Phantom Menace, I think.
Okay.
I may have gone too far in a few places.
I may have gone too far in a few
You
places.
think?
You think?
No. I love it. No.
What is your favorite example of it's like poetry, it rhymes in the Star Wars universe? Anything. Movies, TV, games.
I mean, a lot of Star Wars is really cyclical. I'm a sucker for the hero's journey, where a hero comes from nothing and becomes, big galactic hero. Obviously, we've gotten 3 of those in the movies, but anytime it comes up in any form of Star Wars media, it's a way to immediately endear me to a character.
Yeah, absolutely. We've gotten that a lot in our different shows, and it's interesting always every time it comes up for me to see which way they'll tackle it this time. We obviously have the Skywalker journey, but then we have Ezra Bridger and Omega and Din. I think I'd even argue Grogu.
Yeah.
But or Kaz. Gotta shout out Resistance there, because I know nobody else will. I'm not just saying on the screen. I'm saying in the fandom. Go ahead, Jacob. Next question.
Oh shoot! I went to the wrong document. If you could take one object or one force power from Star Wars and use it in the real world in your life, what would it be and why?
I just want to be able to move objects. I don't want to get up to get the remote. I just want to force it to my hand. That's all I want. I'm very basic. I'm lazy.
The number of times I've wanted to do that is uncountable. And final question for these interview questions, we have a running bit on In a Galaxy. We have a running feud, we could say, with a large view of the Force. All I'm going to do, I'm going to show you a character. You just tell me how you pronounce their name.
Okay, that would be Zam Wessel.
Okay,
Thank
cool.
you.
Okay.
Thank you.
And you say it Wessel, so that way you can say Wesselmania, baby.
Wesselmania.
I love
That's
it.
fantastic. So
now, some people think it's pronounced Zam Wesel. They are wrong.
They're wrong.
There is actually some precedent for that in the the Jango Fett video game that we watched?
Bounty Hunter.
Bounty Hunter, yeah.
Yeah, she said Zam was on that game.
But they also didn't know that Zam was a changeling when they made that game. So, whatever.
They didn't know that Zam was a changeling?
No, that was a late change to Attack of the Clones, actually.
Oh, I didn't actually know
the
that.
dev team didn't really get
that
in time to
That's interesting. I did not know that.
All right.
That's
why when Zam gets knocked out in Bounty Hunter, she doesn't revert back to her alien form. She stays in her human form the entire time.
That does actually make sense now that I think about it. Yeah, no, I wish I had known that when we did Bounty Hunter all those years ago. No, but that's very interesting. I think we're reaching the end of this In a Galaxy episode. But Michael, absolutely plug your stuff. Thanks for coming on this episode. plug where we can find you.
Sure, you can find me on YouTube, All Remaining Systems. You can find me on Twitter at Local First Order. Through my Twitter and YouTube, you can find the different content I put out. I post Star Wars fanfiction stories on Archive of Our Own. I'm doing a series called Heart of the Jedi, which I'm very proud of. And on YouTube, I am doing a Star Wars role-playing game series called Ionized Bastards, featuring such personalities as Alden Diaz from Octo Radio, Jared from Nerd Academy and Epic Confrontations. You'll also see Dan Miller from Broaxium and Jerry from the Bombad Casts. And that is one of my favorite series I've ever done on my channel. So I'm very excited to continue that.
As I said before the recording, I've progressed my way through it slower than I'd like to, but I've watched, I think, pretty much the entire first episode, and it's just fantastic. Thabor Sheems and Fabian Martell are like some of my favorite characters in this new age of Star Wars, I guess you could. I just really want, and again, I haven't seen, maybe you've done this in future episodes, but I just really want him to, Thabor to just go up to somebody and say, "Hi, I'm Thabor Sheems. Did you know you have rights? The New Republic says you do."
He does something very similar in episode 2, so...
Okay. I'm excited to watch that more then. Okay, that's going to be it for this episode of Star Wars in a Galaxy. Next episode, we're going to be doing the 3rd and 4th episodes of Star Wars Droids. What are those episodes called? I know the 3rd one's called The Trigon Unleashed, and the 4th one is called A Race to the Finish. The Trigon Unleashed and The Race to the Finish are the next 2 episodes we're doing. In the meantime, follow us on Twitter at InAGalaxyPod, Instagram at Star Wars in a Galaxy. You can listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, wherever you listen to your podcast, we'll be there. If we're not, email us swinagalaxy@gmail.com. Watch our spin-off show, Epic Confrontations. Michael is a part of it, as well as
Undefeated.
Many others. Undefeated, absolutely. No defeats. We're going to be releasing our newest match, Epic Confrontations 9, Chris Ryans versus Brian Fennessy, very, very soon. And that match is fantastic, and I can't wait for everybody to see it. And then I think we've announced already that the next match after that, the Dark Jedi is unfortunately making his return. Jared is, yeah, I know. Jared, the Dark Jedi, is facing off against Bill Sheehy from Skywalking Through the League after taking out his co-host Trey Mitchell last year, and some other stuff in the future. We'll see. I'm sure there's going to be some stuff for Big Chungus down the line. But
more wins. We just can't stop winning.
Give me a second.
Chungus.
That's correct. I needed to play the Big Chungus clip before we ended here. And I think until next time, may the Force be with you.
Always.
Always.
Always.